Hi everyone, welcome back. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is Gavin. Some of the most devastating truths don't come from suspicion or investigation. They arrive by pure accident. Minded the day I drove 90 minutes down the highway for a work trip, realized I'd forgotten my wallet, turned around, walked through my front door, and found my 5 months pregnant wife in our bed with our neighbor. That single moment rewrote everything I thought I knew about my life. I had been married to Vera for 6 years when I caught her. We met when I was working as a sales director for a medical device company, a job that required constant travel. Vera was a marketing manager for a retail firm, with a regular office schedule and predictable hours. We connected quickly after meeting. Same values, similar upbringing, similar ambitions. We started dating within weeks, and the relationship moved through the standard stages naturally. We got engaged after 2 years, moved in together, had a beautiful wedding surrounded by family, and settled into a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs that we bought together. For the first several years, the marriage felt stable. We both had demanding careers, but we made the effort to coordinate schedules and support each other. We had an active social life with other couples, and from the outside, we looked like a young professional marriage that was working exactly as it should. My job often kept me on the road. At first, Vera handled it well. She stayed busy with her own routines, friends, and work. We video chatted while I was traveling, and when I came home, we reconnected strongly. The distance even added some excitement. It made our time together feel more valuable. The travel wasn't optional. It was a core part of my position, and the income enabled us to live comfortably and save aggressively. Dropping the travel would have meant risking everything we'd built financially. I didn't see it as a choice, it was part of the deal. We had been trying to get pregnant for about a year before it finally happened. The process was rough. Month after month of negative tests, frustration, doubt. We even started talking about whether we needed to see a fertility specialist. Then the positive test finally came, and everything changed. Vera's pregnancy felt like a significant step forward. It felt like our lives were moving into the next chapter we had always pictured. I was excited, nervous, proud, all the things future fathers feel. The pregnancy was progressing smoothly. Vera was 5 months along. The anatomy scan looked perfect. We had started buying baby supplies and setting up the nursery. We were fully committed to preparing for the child we believed was ours. My parents and younger siblings lived about 5 hours away by car, or an hour by plane. Despite the distance, we stayed close. I visited several times a year and called them every week. They were excited about becoming grandparents, and my siblings were ready to be an aunt and uncle. The night everything fell apart began with a phone call around 11:30. It was my father. He told me my mother had been taken to the hospital in an ambulance. She'd had severe chest pain and trouble breathing. The doctors were running tests to see if it was a heart attack. I was immediately on edge and wanted to get to my mother as fast as possible. I checked flights online, but every morning flight was booked. The earliest I could get was late afternoon, and I didn't want to wait that long when we didn't know how serious her condition was. So I decided to drive. If I left right away, I could get there by early afternoon, even with breaks. Driving meant no airport delays, no waiting. I talked to Vera about the plan before bed. She was supportive. She said I should go, that my mother needed me, and that she'd be fine at home. She didn't complain at all about the sudden trip. I woke around 5:30, packed a small bag, and got ready. I was anxious and emotional, thinking only about my mother and what I might walk into at the hospital. Vera was asleep. I didn't want to wake her again since we had already discussed everything. I figured I would text her once I arrived. I left the house quietly around 6 and started the long drive east. My mind was completely locked on the emergency, my mother's health, the possibilities, the unknowns. After about 90 minutes on the road, I stopped at a gas station to refuel and use the restroom. When I reached for my wallet to pay, my pocket was empty. I checked the other pocket. Nothing. I searched the car and my bag. The wallet was nowhere to be found. Frustration hit me hard. I knew immediately I must have left it on the dresser during the rushed morning. I'd been so focused on getting out the door that I didn't even think to grab it. I stood there at the pump trying to decide what to do. I considered taking the risk and continuing the drive. Maybe my father could send money. Perhaps I could get by using my phone for payments. But the reality was simple. I needed the wallet. I needed my ID, my insurance cards, and my credit cards. If something happened with my mother, I might need identification to sign medical documents. And if I ended up flying back home later, I definitely needed my ID. After a few minutes of weighing everything, I accepted that I had to turn around. The mistake was going to cost me about 3 hours total, driving back for the wallet and then returning to that point. But there was no way around it. I turned the car around and headed west toward Denver. I was angry at myself for the oversight, stressed about the lost time. But I knew I had to fix the mistake before I could move forward. I got back to the house around 8 in the morning. The sun was up, the neighborhood looked normal. People leaving for work, someone walking a dog, a couple of cars warming up in driveways. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed our neighbor's car parked on the street directly in front of our house instead of in his own driveway next door. It registered as slightly odd, but I didn't think much of it. I assumed he was doing a project or had something blocking his driveway. The neighbor was in his mid-30s and lived alone. Friendly enough. We'd talk once in a while. He had helped Vera with a few things when I was traveling, carried heavy items for her once, handled a plumbing issue another time. He always seemed like a decent neighbor. I walked up to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. My only thought was to grab my wallet and get back on the road. The house was quiet at first. I assumed Vera was still asleep upstairs. I headed toward the stairs. As I started climbing, I heard sounds coming from the master bedroom. Voices, movement. Something about it felt off. I walked down the hallway. The bedroom door was slightly open. The noises became clearer. My brain recognized the sounds before I was willing to accept them. I pushed the door open all the way. The scene was immediate, obvious, and impossible to misinterpret. Vera was in our bed with the neighbor. Both of them were completely undressed. Both were in the middle of sex. The image hit me instantly and burned itself into my mind before they even realized I was standing there. For a moment, time stopped. My mind blanked out, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Everything I believed about my marriage, my life, and my future just collapsed in 1 second. The neighbor saw me first. His face snapped into panic. He started scrambling for the sheets, trying to cover himself and get out of bed. He was stammering something, but I couldn't process a single word. Vera saw me next. Her face twisted into pure shock and horror. She understood instantly that I wasn't supposed to be home, and she had been caught. Whatever she thought she could hide was now exposed. Her expression told me she knew her entire world had just detonated. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stood there, 5 seconds, maybe 30, I honestly don't know. Time didn't feel real anymore. I stared at the scene and tried to force my mind to accept what my eyes were showing me. Then I turned around and walked out of the room before the anger inside me broke into something I couldn't take back. I walked down the hallway, down the stairs. I heard Vera's voice behind me, calling my name, crying, scrambling to get dressed. I watched the neighbor rushing down the stairs, the front door opening and closing as he escaped. By the time Vera came downstairs, I was in the kitchen. She was wearing a robe, crying, trying to talk. Her words were predictable and empty. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. It only happened once. I don't know what I was thinking. I am sorry. I love you. We can fix this. None of her words mattered. None of it even registered. All I could see was the image from the bedroom, the destruction of everything I thought my marriage was. I felt rage, humiliation, numbness, disgust, all at the same time. The betrayal hit even harder knowing Vera was pregnant. I had spent months assuming the child was mine, assuming we were building a family. All of that was now tainted. She kept crying, apologizing, explaining, minimizing. I wasn't hearing any of it. Finally, I walked past her and went upstairs to the bedroom. My wallet was on the dresser, right where I left it. I picked it up and walked back downstairs. Vera followed me the whole time, still talking, still begging. I walked to the front door. She grabbed my arm and asked me to stay and talk. I pulled my arm away without looking at her and walked out. I got into my car, started the engine, and backed out of the driveway while Vera stood in the doorway of the house, crying as I drove away. I started driving east again. I was on complete autopilot. My hands were shaking, my mind was blank, and my body was just going through the motions. I kept driving only because that's what I'd planned to do that morning, before everything collapsed. Vera began calling within minutes. Call after call. I let them go to voicemail at first. Eventually, I picked up one call just to tell her to stop. I told her there was nothing to discuss, that the marriage was over. Then I blocked her number. The rest of the drive to my family's home felt like a dissociated blur. I reached the hospital in the late afternoon. My mother had suffered a serious cardiac and stroke event, but she was stable. I spent time with my family, all while silently trying to process the complete destruction of my marriage. That evening, I told my father what had happened. I told him I had walked in on Vera with our neighbor, that I was filing for divorce, and I didn't even know if the baby she was carrying was mine. He was furious, but he stood by me. From my parents' house, I contacted a divorce attorney in Denver. I found one through online searches and phone consultations. I explained the entire situation, including Vera's pregnancy. I asked what my options were and what I needed to prepare for. The attorney explained that Colorado was a no-fault divorce state, but infidelity still mattered for certain decisions. He said the pregnancy made things more complicated, but I had the right to request a paternity test. He advised me not to sign any birth certificate or accept any parental responsibility until paternity was confirmed. He recommended filing immediately. I told him to proceed. I wanted the divorce paperwork filed before I even returned to Denver. Vera kept trying to reach me through every possible method. She called from new numbers, texted from friends' phones, and left long voicemails begging me to talk to her. She asked me to listen, to let her explain, to give her another chance. I responded only when necessary, and every response was cold. I told her we were done, that there was no coming back from what I saw, that she had destroyed everything. I told her that any further communication needed to go through the attorneys. She started using the pregnancy as emotional pressure. She said the baby deserved a family, that I couldn't abandon my child, that we needed to stay together for the baby's sake. She insisted it was a terrible mistake, but one we could recover from. But by then, I was already questioning everything, including the baby. Vera was 5 months pregnant, but I had been traveling a lot. I had no way of knowing whether the child was conceived during one of my trips, when apparently she had been seeing our neighbor. That uncertainty poisoned everything. I couldn't see her pregnancy as anything but hopeful or meaningful anymore. I saw it only as another piece of the betrayal, another lie in what had clearly become a long, hidden chain of deception. I took time off work and stayed with my family for about a week, helped my mother recover, tried to make sense of everything with their support. But eventually, I had to return to Denver, both for my job and to handle the practicalities of separating from Vera. There was no chance I could move back into the house. I couldn't be in that space. I couldn't sleep in that bed. I couldn't exist in the same environment where I had discovered the betrayal. So I found a furnished short-term rental and stayed there instead. Vera did everything she could to slow down the divorce. Her attorney filed motions asking for more time. She requested delays. She suggested mediation and counseling. She tried every legal tactic available to drag out the process. But she couldn't stop it forever. The divorce moved forward through Colorado's required months-long legal procedure, dividing assets, assigning debts, deciding the future of the house, all the administrative work of dismantling 6 years of marriage. She gave birth while the divorce was still in progress. She called to tell me she'd had a baby boy, healthy, named him something I didn't bother to remember. She said I could come see him if I wanted. I told her, through my attorney, that I wouldn't be seeing the baby, signing any birth certificate, or accepting responsibility until a DNA test proved paternity. I said I had serious doubts the child was mine. I agreed to the test, but nothing else. Vera was devastated. She had convinced herself that seeing the baby would change my mind. That becoming a father would erase the betrayal, the lies, the months of deception. That I would fall in love with the child regardless of whether he was mine. But I didn't budge. I couldn't allow myself to bond with a child who might not be mine. I had to protect myself emotionally, legally, financially, until the truth was undeniable. The court arranged the paternity test. Vera brought the baby to the medical facility. I went separately. We each provided samples. The lab would send results directly to the court and to both attorneys. Waiting was torture. A part of me hoped the child was mine, that at least one piece of my life had been real, that I was truly a father, even if the marriage was over. Another part hoped the child wasn't mine, so I could walk away clean. No tieto vera. No lifelong connection to the woman who betrayed me. No forced co-parenting with someone I could no longer trust. The results came back about 10 days later. My attorney called before the paperwork arrived. The child was not mine. The baby that Vera carried. The child I had prepared to father. The milestone I had been excited for. None of it belonged to me. The entire pregnancy had been built on deception. She had been carrying, most likely, our neighbor's child while pretending it was mine. I felt everything at once. Relief, because I wouldn't be tied to her through a child. Grief, because I had wanted to be a father. Rage, because the betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. Vindication, because my instincts had been right. Once the paternity results were official, the rest of the divorce moved quickly. Vera had no leverage left. My responsibilities were limited to dividing marital assets, nothing related to child support or parenting. The final settlement split our assets according to the law. Vera received her share of the house equity, retirement accounts, and the savings we built during the marriage. But she lost everything of substance. She lost the marriage she destroyed. She lost the husband who had been committed to building a life with her. She lost the future she had imagined. She lost the family structure she counted on. She lost the father figure she had hoped would raise the child. She lost her reputation as our friends learned the truth. She lost the bond with my family, who had treated her as their own. She lost the stability, trust, and partnership that had shaped her adult life. The financial settlement gave her money, but none of it replaced what she destroyed in a few hours of catastrophic decisions. Looking back now, I see lessons from my story with painful clarity. I learned that a life can collapse in a single morning. I woke up believing I had a loyal wife, an unborn child, and a secure future. By 8 o'clock, all of it had been exposed as fiction. The life I thought I was living was nothing more than a well-hidden lie. I learned that betrayal during pregnancy carries a different kind of damage. Vera being pregnant while she was involved with our neighbor added layers of violation I wasn't prepared for. The child I had been preparing to raise, turning out not to be mine, made the betrayal complete, not just sexual. She was willing to let me raise another man's child as my own. I learned that forgetting my wallet saved me from a far worse fate. If I hadn't turned back that morning, I never would have known the truth. I would have gone to my parents' place. I would have kept believing Vera was faithful. I would have gone on preparing to raise a child that wasn't mine. I might have raised that child for years before discovering the truth in some other painful way. I learned that some people will use pregnancy as a trap. Vera's first instinct was to use the baby to stop me from walking away. She was willing to use an innocent child as a tool. She planned to tie me to her through a child she knew might not be mine. I learned that the legal system protects people when they request paternity testing before signing a birth certificate, which is a basic right. I wasn't required to take responsibility without proof. The law recognized my right to know the truth before accepting a lifetime obligation. Most importantly, I learned that immediate, decisive action after betrayal is the correct response. I didn't need to think it over, offer second chances, or consider counseling. What I saw was enough. Walking away and filing for divorce on the same day was the right decision. Some people say I should have let Vera explain. Others say she got exactly what she deserved, and that leaving immediately was the only reasonable reaction. I agree with the latter. I'm entirely at peace with the choices I made. I handled the situation as well as anyone could. I protected myself from an even worse outcome. And I know I deserve better than what Vera gave me. I haven't heard anything about her in over a year. I assume she's raising our neighbor's child on her own. I don't know if he stayed or left. I don't care either way. She stopped being my concern the moment I walked out. I deserved loyalty and honesty. Vera offered neither. So I left entirely and without hesitation. I am healing, slowly but steadily, rebuilding from what was destroyed. That, to me, is success. Thank you for watching.